AI is starting to change photography. It's making some inroads into real estate photography as well, but a lot of the headlines, a lot of the hype is actually obscuring what's really going on with AI as it's affecting real estate photography and some other genres as well. And it all started a lot this year, back in August 2022, when a digital artist won first prize in one of the categories at the Colorado State Fair by just using an AI engine, just inputting some text, outputting an image, and that was it. Won first prize. Now, the artist did say, yes, I did that, and it was completely okay. I didn't break any of the rules doing it, but a lot of those headlines that came out because of that started a firestorm. Other stuff started happening too, where, for instance, photographers were able to just, here I can take a picture of a portrait and I can then use that same portrait in an AI engine that will give me all kinds of other renditions that I don't have to keep taking the same subject over and over again. That really raised a lot of controversy because now it's like, well, I am not going to get commissioned if I'm doing portraits or other type of work to do various renditions. If I'm shooting for a clothing line or some other product line, could this really affect some of the future of that? And some of that hype was fueled by some of these apps. I was able to, and I showed examples earlier on social media, taking a portrait of myself, a simple selfie, and turning myself into somebody else, what I would have looked like, maybe my ancestors looked like back in the 18th century. And that was all fun. It's neat little things you can do on some of these apps, but everybody knows that when technology just starts out, it can grow, it can change things, what's going to happen later down the road. And that's where a lot of this hype isn't necessarily hype. Some of this is real. Going back to that first example, the biggest case that scares everybody is, well, if I just input some text into an AI engine, what am I going to get? I can get something great out of it. Well, I tried that a couple times here for trying to get a thumbnail for this YouTube video, trying to get a robot holding a camera, and it didn't actually work out all that well. Had some big fails out of that, but once again, this is just starting. And what could you do if it were to be real estate photography? Well, that's different. And I know this because it's starting to happen right now. Now, there's a few things regarding this, and one of the biggest ones is the concept that we'll always have, which is the difference between capture and concept. So one of the concept things that's been around for many years is renders, and you can see this company like Lumion, they do amazing stuff. Everything here is completely fake. None of this is real. An architect will draw up some drawings for a new building, they input that into Lumion, and you get these beautiful renders that look real with people, everything imaginable. So you can also get stuff like that output by Box Brownie. You pay a certain fee. It's very expensive though, and it does take a lot of time, which then brings up another important point with this. And we have to bear this in mind when I talk about some of these other points coming up and some of the other news of what's changing with AI and real estate photography, is that there comes a point of affordability. There's a point of diminishing return depending on what you put into it. The technology can exist. It doesn't mean that everybody can use it. It just might not fit. You know, the Wright brothers, their first flight was in 1910. Well, we still aren't just using flying cars like they showed in the Jetsons. Not everybody can afford an airplane. So what do? Well, we hire pilots, right? And also, even in those cases, we only use that part of the time. So we don't use airplanes or helicopters or whatever for all of our transportation needs. We still use cars, probably 90% of all transportation, at least in the United States. Bicycles, trains, buses, all that stuff. So planes are just a small portion of it. That's just an example of where a groundbreaking technology came out, but not everybody could use it because it wasn't affordable. But realistically, there are some things that are already happening now and will just continue to grow. Virtual staging has been a real big one. You know, I use Apply Design. Very simple to use. It can add furniture, realistic shadows, everything in there using an AI engine that also learns, by the way, the more that it's used so that it gets better on creating these various layouts. A couple others you've probably seen already and probably are using Photoshop with their object selection tool. So with that tool, the AI engine in Photoshop can start determining where different objects are so that you can just edit around those objects, you can remove those objects, whatever it is you want to do to enhance the photograph, you no longer have to define outlines of things yourself. This is just the beginning of what Photoshop would have. And of course, they have in their AI engine be able to detect not just objects, but also sky, to be able to do the sky swaps we're all familiar with. And while those things, you can consider that, concept, not capture. Capture is very important because it's not like you're going to have some robot like a Roomba running around a house that's going to be taking photos. Now, I know some of you are thinking, oh, well, that's entirely possible. You could have that. We have Roombas, we have robots, yes. But let's go back to the Wright brothers and airplanes. It can be cost prohibitive. So the only way that a company stays in business and gets funding as a startup is if they can show that something is profitable with a big enough margin, with a big enough audience. And having just a robot going through a house is probably not very likely. So there's that realism factor of capture, but there's a little bit more to that. The biggest thing that's starting to happen, you might recall this from an earlier video I had when I talked about Zillow and some of the changes that were coming up, is that photos by photographers, real people taking real photos, those are being used now by new emerging AI engines to make other decisions for online buyers, real estate agents, and whatnot. So RestB.ai is a big one that's doing this. And RestBI has a variety of automated services where it takes the photos that you as a real estate photographer created, and then it can analyze them. One of the biggest and most astounding ones that they have that I see as a big use is where they find similarities. I like this kitchen. I'm a home buyer. I'm looking at various houses. I see a kitchen that I really like. Find me other homes nearby that have similar kitchens. So RestB.ai does that, and I can see that being integrated into more and more of these real estate listing sites. Now, when we talk about affordability though, what listing sites will still be out there? So that's a big problem, as I talked about in that prior video. And by the way, I have a link to that and other information down in the description for this video. But if Zillow's starting to flail like it has been in 2022, Redfin is, tanked by about, 90% in value over 2022, what listing sites will still be there for AI? So this brings up an interesting concept to really look for as we move forward with AI and real estate photography, and that there's two main types of AI affecting real estate photography. The first one is what I would consider just traditional AI as we understand it right now, or think about it most of the time, where you take some text or maybe an image or something like that, and you put it into AI and you get some other type of image, either created completely from scratch, just from some text or something modified. But what I call reverse AI is a little bit different, and that's like what RestB.ai is doing, where you take finished images, many different finished images, that is processed continually by the AI engine, and then it can produce things for similar search results. It can also determine the property value, possibly based off imperfections in the property, size, location, things like that. Don't forget, when you take photos, it could eventually be that in your EXIF they'll want to have GPS data, and that will then determine a property's address, its location, then its zip code, and its price. And by having capture, not concept, then you can show realism in the photos. That are there cracks in the walls? Is the paint dated? Is something else dated in here? We don't have really good flooring. Something along those lines that can help determine a home's value. So what this does is it makes the photographer the critical link in the entire chain, no matter how AI is implemented. Sure, AI can make your job easier. You've seen that for years. You've got automatic white balance, you got automatic exposure, you got all kinds of automatic stuff that can kind of help, doesn't always work that well, can always be improved over the years, but why isn't it? Well, the cost factor. Sure, you could have an expensive camera that might cost $100,000 and put it on the space shuttle or something, or the International Space Station, that would be able to do all kinds of automated stuff, but it just isn't there. But still, with your skills, you need to have somebody out there capturing to feed the engine, to be able to feed the machine into the type of tools that would fit the affordability factor so that it can progress. So, question of the day, will photographers, real estate photographers in particular, be replaced by AI? I would argue strongly no, but You need to be able to use your skills with AI. And that's all that's happening now, and it's all that's going to be happening in the future. Yes, as new camera features come out, some of them may make your workflow even faster, right? Also the editing. Yes, your editing time could be greatly reduced by having some of this AI of automatic object detection, better dynamic range detection possibly. So those tools will be very handy. But as we go forward and to think of AI just replacing something, not really. I can see rendering software for conceptualizing things becoming less expensive because when rendering first came out, it didn't have virtual staging as competitors. There's a lot of virtual staging companies out there and writing a lot of software for this. And as that goes forward, well, it might also include the ability to do renders off of some drawings and, why not, off of some floor plans. So right now you've got applications like Cubicasa. You can do a floor plan in probably 15 minutes for most houses, and then why not be able to take that floor plan for that existing house and recreate a brand new one. So there's a lot of stuff that could still come out for conceptualizing things. How will that affect real estate? The biggest thing for real estate is that you might be able to promote a possibility. So someone has a fixer. Well, hey, look at these possibilities that you could do with this house. As a real estate photographer, that opens up opportunity for you if these skills that you can acquire with new software that would come out can excel against your competitors. So it's a matter of just being on the lookout for what really AI is doing, not to compete against it. It's not going to change real estate photographers from the fact that they won't be replaced. All that it's going to do is change the way that you might do your photography and also the products that you might provide your clients.